Well, Swamiji, that was so delightful. We definitely needed a monk to take us to the root of yoga and remind us of the cessation of all suffering as the deepest meaning of yoga. You have made this philosophy your very life and soul, and to hear from the mouth of someone who speaks from the very heart the philosophy that they live and they breathe and they think of is definitely so impactful. I am absolutely sure that all our viewers and listeners today would have been extremely illumined, benefited by your discourse. You have taken us on a tour of the four yogas that Swami Vivekananda presented and reminded people about. I am sure there will be a lot of questions, and with your permission, we will move on to the
Thank you
Q&A.
very much, and pranams once again. It's wonderful to see you. I've seen your talks online. It's wonderful to meet you, even if only virtually. But it's a blessing to see you.
Well, Swamiji, you know, from one monk to the other, there's a kind of brotherhood that is on a frequency of its own. The pleasure is mutual. We will have Shreya ask the question.
Pranam Swamiji, what a beautiful lecture. And we have some questions I would like to start. Before we go into the philosophy and the knowledge, out of our own curiosity, I would like to ask you that you have dedicated your life in service of humankind. So would like to know a little bit more about yourself, what inspired you, what was the moment that made you take this path, and who is your role model? If you could share that with us, and then we will go into the spirituality and devotion questions.
As I said, I grew up in a devout household. My parents were devotees, Sri Ramakrishna, close to the ashram. There were books of Swami Vivekananda in the house. You know, I read the great French philosopher and scientist, Pascal. He said once, leave good books lying around in the house and the child will take care of his own education. So somehow like that it happened. I read Vivekananda's books and I felt, if this is true, that God exists and one can realize God, then this is the life that one should aspire for. So I decided that I would become, I would be seeker of God. I would seek God in my life. That would be my life's goal. Becoming a monk, I understood a little more when I grew up what it means. And so I decided to become a monk. Yes. Role model, I would say Swami Vivekananda. Who else?
Thank you, Swamiji. So my next question is that in Bhakti traditions, God is said to have formed and understood to have love and compassion. Advaita philosophy says there is no duality and Paramatma is formless. So are they referring to different entities? What is the relationship of God of Advaita with the God of Bhakti traditions? If you could kindly explain that, please.
It is the same. Remember, in the Bhakti traditions, Vedanta, let us say, Vedanta is based on the Upanishads. Basically, Vedanta means the Upanishad. Vedanta Nama Upanishad Pramanam, and all other associated texts like Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras. Now, the great Vedanta Acharyas, the masters who wrote commentaries on Vedanta, on the Upanishads, Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita, Adi Shankaracharya, his commentaries form the basis of the Advaita Vedanta system, which you just referred to, which is our core philosophy. But then there was Sri Ramanujacharya, who wrote commentaries on the same texts, which becomes the foundation for vishishtadvaita Vedanta. Madhvacharya, whose commentaries become the foundation for Dvaita Vedanta. And like that, there are systems like Nimbarka Acharya's Dvaitadvaita Vedanta, our Vallabhacharyas, Shuddhadvaita Vedanta. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's school associated with him is Achintya Bheda Bhed, and so on. Now, one distinction between these schools is Advaita alone gives primacy to jnana. All the other schools, they also have jnana, dhyana, karma, but they give primacy to bhakti. And that comes because they are all internally very consistent. The way they understand and interpret Vedanta, out of that, the solution, the path comes out of that. So if you follow the philosophy of vishishtadvaita, then bhakti becomes primary. Notice one thing about these acharyas, they include all the yogas, but they put an hierarchy. So for Shankaracharya, karma yoga is foundational, gives purity of mind. Upasana, which includes meditation and bhakti, gives concentration of mind, ekagrata. With the pure and concentrated mind, one comes to jnana vichara, inquiry, jnana yoga. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana of the Upanishadic text, which gives self-knowledge that Aham Brahmasmi. So for Shankaracharya, Jnana Yoga is primary, next is Upasana, next is Karma. Sri Ramanujacharya reverses it. Karma Yoga is foundational again, but then through Jnana one realizes, I am a spark of consciousness, I am a spark of the divine. And the divine, Narayana, is the whole, Vishnu or Narayana is the whole, I am a part of that. So as a part, my relationship to the whole must be one of bhakti. So according to Ramanujacharya, bhakti becomes the primary path, the ultimate path which will lead you to moksha. So it depends on the paradigm, how you have interpreted these texts. Now, form and formless. In the bhakti traditions also, form and formless are accepted. The Achintya Veda with the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they say that Sri Krishna has form and a formless aspect. What is the formless aspect? They call it Tanubha. The radiance of Sri Krishna's body is what those Advaitins they are calling the formless Brahman. It is just the radiance of the form of Sri Krishna. If you go deeper, you will find a personal form, the form of Lord Krishna. So formless and with form are accepted by all traditions. In Hindu traditions, if you find if you look at the mantras associated with each deity, whether it is Krishna or Durga or Shiva, you will find they are always referred to as sometimes Sakara, sometimes Nirakara. So with form, without form, accepted everywhere. The primacy is given to without form in Advaita Vedanta. The primary focus is with form in dualistic or bhakti schools. But you are both referring to the same reality. Sri Ramakrishna put it this way. That which has form is also formless. He said just like water in the ocean freezes in places into particular forms, icebergs. So they have different forms. And then again melts back into the formless water. Similarly, because of the intense devotion of the devotee, the formless Brahman alone appears. That itself appears as Saguna Brahman, as Ishvara, as Bhagavan. And if you analyze it, it again melts back into the formless. Form and formless are exactly the same reality. Whether it is iceberg or it melts into water, it's the same water. But depending upon your philosophical structure which you follow, your attitude to the four yogas will be different. I don't know if that covers your question.
It does. Thank you so much for explaining that beautifully.
How can you say that? The only truth about God is that He has form. It is undoubtedly true that God comes down to earth in a human form, as in the case of Krishna. And it is true as well that God reveals Himself to His devotees in various forms. But it is also true that God is formless. He is the indivisible existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. He has been described in the Vedas both as formless and as endowed with form. He is also described there both as attributeless and as endowed with attributes. Do you know what I mean? Sachidananda is like an infinite ocean. Intense cold freezes the water into ice, which floats on the ocean in blocks of various forms. Ocean of the Absolute, These forms are meant for the bhaktas, the lover of gods. But when the sun of knowledge rises, the ice melts. It becomes the same water it was before, water above and water below, everywhere nothing but water. Therefore, a prayer in the Bhagavata says, O Lord, Thou hast form, and Thou art also formless. Thou walkest before us, O Lord, in the shape of a man. Again, Thou hast been described in the Vedas as beyond words and thought. But you may say that for certain devotees, God assumes eternal forms. There are places in the ocean where the ice doesn't melt at all. It assumes the form of ghost. Yes, God has form and He is formless too. Further, He is beyond both form and formless. No one can limit Him. Source from Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.